Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, momentum has already gathered online and offline as candidates have for various elective offices in the coming general elections and that have kickstarted their campaign. In the same vein, their supporters are also taking messages of their candidates to different fora in order to canvass support ahead of the election. Now, today on the program, we will look at how the online space has been and also look at the possibility of converting online support to actual votes on the day of the election. We would also look at previous elections, juxtaposing the number of active social media accounts and total votes cast. But before we get into all of that, let's first of all take a look at the trending topics in the past week.
Frontline candidate of the APC and PDP in the 2023 presidential elections drew the ire and commendation of Nigerians as both of them visited the northern part of the country to canvass votes and support for their separate candidature ahead of the election. Both candidates were said to have made ethnic colorative remarks as they spoke to supporters who gathered in their numbers to listen to them. Nigerians have been narrating their torturous ordeals as the torrential rain and flood keeps destroying their homes, farmlands and property, and reportedly killing about 800 people. Some 1.3 million people have been displaced and more than 200,000 homes have been destroyed. The flooding is expected to continue until the end of November. Nigeria is used to seasonal flooding, but this year has been significantly worse than usual.
Well, there you go. Those were some of the trends in the past week. But joining us to look at today's topic, we have with us Olubunmi Ayontuji. He's a legislative draftsman as well as a government relations advisor and lobbyist. He joins us via Zoom from Abuja. Olubunmi, it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Indeed. We also have joining us Ahmed Mustafa. He's a digital media strategist and a social media expert. He joins us also via Zoom from Oshogbo, the Osun State capital. It's a pleasure to have you on the program, Ahmed.
Thank you for having me, Victor. It's a pleasure to always be here.
Of course. So, Olubunmi, kickstart the conversation for us. There's so much going on that we have seen online, Twitter especially. There's just talk from this supporters of every candidate now. But what is going on generally? What's the atmosphere like online in terms of what the candidates have to offer and, also looking at, what it will be like when the D-Day comes?
All right. Thank you very much. Unlike ever before in the history of this country, I dare say, we have a massive army of young persons that are interested in the electoral process, not just electioneering, the whole process, pre-elections and hopefully after elections. Twitter, for example, has been agog with validations and propositions and questions for and from candidates. This has not to do with just the president or the position of the presidency and all that, but across board. Approximately, according to data that are available, we have about 43 million social network users in Nigeria. And now you would agree with me that we don't even need data to tell us that a chunk of this number are young persons, and young persons that have been basically battered by not just the policies of government, not just the regulations that are stuffing or stroking life outside or out of their businesses or startups, but because of the extant issues that we face as a country, these people are forced to be involved in whoever governs them. And it's a good one, because unlike before, we now have young persons that are really interested in who governs them up to the local government level. So it won't just be like before. Now we have persons, millions of young persons that will be 18 this year, and hopefully will definitely vote next year if they get their PVC. So, and also, unlike before, we have a citizens-oriented campaign for candidates. There's one of the major candidates for presidency that we all know that have this massive following of young persons on and offline. And this is a very good one for developing countries like us, that young persons hopefully would actually pour out in mass to campaign. Now we have not just persons on social media. I am aware that some candidates now have social media cells, what they call social media cells. So they meet outside social media. They actually introduce themselves on social media, but they now have taken it outside social media to physical meetings, which is a good one. We have also had the introduction of rallies, so people network and meet face to face. So people saying everything now is on social media will not vote. We have had methods of modus operandi that young persons now use to translate votes from E to physical, if that works. Thank you very much.
Indeed, it works. From E to physical actually works. But let's get to hear from Ahmed. Ahmed, Olubunmi has given us, a brief of, what is going on in terms of, candidates, their supporters, and what is going on. But let's just track back a little bit to maybe say 2019 or even 2015, which, of course, even at that time, there was that high number of Nigerians, maybe not as much as now, but there was a high number of Nigerians on social media, campaigning here and there, how that's it there. So we have, in 2015, we had about 19 million, online, but we had 68.8 million voters who were registered, but the votes cast at the tail end, stood at 29.4 million. In 2019, the figures actually rose in terms of active users. Also registered voters went high, but the number of total votes cast went down to 28.6 million. Ahmed, what do you think was responsible for, those numbers in 2019 and 2015?
Well, Victor, I would like to make this absolutely clear. Social media is a thing, and it has a huge impact on where we get to as a country in terms of electioneering. But like Mr. Ayonti said, I would like to disagree with him just a little bit. Okay. We've seen this euphoria before. In 2015, the euphoria was not as strong as this, but it was quite strong at the time. And 2019 was a build, another step from what it was in 2015, like you said. And now we're at 2023. I feel that we're still yet to get to that point where we're able to effectively translate the online movement that we see into actual vote cast on the day of election. And that's what is key for me, because yes, there have been introductions of a few things, the rallies here and there, but that rally gives you a carnival atmosphere, which will be missing on the day of elections. I am hopeful and looking forward to the future with a lot of optimism that despite the absence of this carnival atmosphere, young Nigerians will take the future in their own hands by coming out on the day of elections to cast their vote. Like you said in the data you presented, in 2019, there was a lot more social media users if you compare that with 2015, but that did not necessarily translate into a larger turnout on the day of elections. I'm hoping that 2023 is a complete deviation from the norm, which has been that a lot of people come online and show support to a particular party or a particular candidate, but do not translate this to actual votes and elections. And I think the key reason is because just like it was in 2019, in 2023 again, the focus has been on the principal office in the land, which is the presidency. People are not overtly concerned about who their governors are, who their House of Rep members are, who their senators are. The focus has been majorly, I dare say 93 to 94% of the conversations going on online about the elections have been geared towards who becomes president of this country. As good as that is a complete deviation from what we should be talking about normally, because young people should be more concerned about who their reps are, because those people are more accessible to you than whoever becomes president, and they carry, in my own opinion, more value than whoever becomes president of the country in 2023.
All right, so let me just take a track back again to the elections that we recently had. You know, we had governorship elections in Osun and also in Ekiti, of which the governor was just sworn in yesterday. So which role would you say social media played in these two elections that we just had not too long ago?
If you ask my honest opinion, I think little to none whatsoever, because in the build-up to particularly the Osun election, a particular political party, I don't want to mention which political, had a lot of noise being made on social media. At the end of the day, the votes that political party was able to garner was, for the lack of better words, poor. You know, if you compare that vis-a-vis the amount of
social media support
that they have built on social media, I was looking forward to a larger turnout and a more keenly contested election with respect to this particular political party. Eventually, what you found out was that a larger percentage of people who voted were people in their who are in the age bracket of 40 and above, who necessarily are not on social media. The young people, particularly in Osun and Ekiti, who made up a larger population of those who were online, did not turn out on election. And this is why I said that, for me, I feel that the momentum on social media has been particularly geared towards who becomes president of this country. And I'm believing that as we move towards the elections in 2023, the turnout of voters will be a lot more, because, like Mr. Anyantuji rightly said, there's a lot of voter education. One only hopes that this education has gotten to the right people, and that these people eventually, on the day of elections, turn out and cast their vote.
All right, let me bring back Olubunmi into the conversation. Olubunmi, looking at the number of, or looking from the example that Ahmed just made, looking at the elections in Osun and Ekiti, one of the figures or the data we also pulled out is the fact that most of the people, the millions of people online, are mostly young people, and we have that the Gen Z now, so to speak, now adding to all of that number, and also including more platforms where they're comfortable in. So how do we put that? How do we bridge that gap? To ensure that all of the support and momentum that has been gathered across board, TikTok, which is pretty much catching up now, Twitter and all of those, platforms. How do we ensure that, the momentum we see online, is brought offline?
All
With
right.
regards to these two elections,
I would like to reply to what the distinguished person from Osogbo said, right?
Yeah.
I share in his pessimism, but I want to disagree. Now, I think we'll be deluding ourselves if we continually use the yardstick of 2019 to judge the next elections in 2023. In fact, that would be an utter mistake, a monumental one at that. Because in 2019, we never had NSAS. Police brutality was not at an all-time high in 2019. Twitter was not banned in 2019. Fintechs were not out of the space in 2019. People's survival have been literally threatened in the past 4 years. We all know survival is the first rule of existence. It's war. So if you're threatening my survival and I have the only chance to make myself relevant again, I would exploit, and that's through voting. I'm voting through balloting. So many things have happened. Unemployment, brain drain, and the rest of security has happened in the last 4 years that would definitely prompt young person to take the future into their hands. And judging by what has happened in the last 3 years, we cannot, by any indices, say the noise was there in 2019. The noise, the young persons were all there shouting in 2019, but then they didn't vote. We cannot even compare it with now. For example, I was in Ede during the elections in Osun, and I saw my peers, young persons like me, stay under the sun to vote for whoever they want to vote for. I think we are streamlining this to a particular party and a particular presidential candidate, and that is wrong. It is wrong because people also have other choices. Young persons have choices too. There are young persons that will vote for the government of the day. So I think we should not judge by that. That's number one. Number two, right? I already
Olubunmi,
when we say...
Olubunmi, let me just hold you there before you go into the second point. We need to take a quick break. And of course, when we come back, I'll come back to you to drop the second point you wanted to at this point in time. But let's stay for a bit. We're back in a moment. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Channels Beam on Channels Television, and we've been looking at how, coming ahead of the next general elections, how political parties can convert all of the momentum they're gathering online into actual votes on the day of the election. And of course, I have with me Ahmed Mustafa, who is joining us via Zoom from Oshogbo, as well as Olubunmi Ayotunji, who is joining us via Zoom as well from Abuja. But just before that break, Ayotunji was trying to drop a point. He talked, first of all, about things that have happened in the last 3 to 4 years since the 2019 elections, and he believes that what would happen in 2023 would be different. Ayotunji, I stopped you on making your second point, so if you could continue from the second point you were trying to make earlier on.
All right. Secondly, right, Mr. Ahmed mentioned carnival-like rallies. You know, when young persons are involved in a process, not just the electoral process, they approach the process with a young person's understanding. And we are not used to that yet because we're developing. Young persons are not used to the typical political congregation and all that. They are used to something that is more fun. And in the middle of that fun, they pass their messages. That's why you see the inclusion of entertainment. Even in the protests, in one of the massive protests that we've had in this country, that's the EndSARS protest. You saw entertainers, you saw dancers, you saw singers and all. That's how they congregate. And it's a general phenomenon with young persons, right? So when they do rallies, in the rally they network, they collect numbers, they contact trace. And when we say these things would not matter with elections, then it's erroneous, because that's how young persons congregate, through rallies, through meetings. And now one of the things they are doing that I know from the social media to translate votes from social media to the physical, right, is to have mini cells of persons. For example, in Abuja, I know that one of the political parties have persons that are in Abuja, in Dawaki, in Gwarimpa, in Kubwa, and in Wuse. So they meet in like a cell group that churches do, and they systemize on how they want to go forward to push their candidate, which is a good one. Yeah. Also, when they do rallies, they collect numbers, they send messages, and these things are what you call the grassroots, basically. Though I agree with him when he said that there is a need for young persons to actually go to the grassroots. Again, I think one of the problems that I think would majorly affect the outcome of physical elections is that young persons majorly, and people on social media need to understand that it's not the names of candidates that will be on ballot papers, right? It's the logo of the party and the name of the party. And so many persons do not even understand or are familiar with the logo or the name of their party as it will be written. Some don't even know the number that the party will be on the ballot box. These are on the ballot paper, sorry. These are major things I think young persons should be familiar with, and not just a name, not just the name of the candidate, because these are things that people actually know. All these things, if being put into use, would actually have a massive impact in the electioneering process. And I believe strongly, I might be too optimistic, that young persons are really coming out to vote this time around. But maybe sadly for just presidency, but then this election in 2023 would not just be like every other one.
All right. So, Ahmed, raised issues about what happened during the elections in Osun, where he talked about a certain political party that, had all of this momentum and, pretty much didn't do well during the elections. I kind of also, remember when we had a by-election, in, I think, Lagos West, just after the EndSARS protest. And, the result, again, pretty much didn't represent what a lot of people thought what it would be. So maybe, I'm also looking at it, from that point of view that, perhaps maybe there should be a change of approach from everyone in terms of ensuring that everyone comes out. I reckon with the fact that you said young people or people on social media are now very interested in the electoral process and not just on the voting itself. So it's a whole, it's everything and just not that particular day day. But moving on, Ahmed, let me just bring you back again into the conversation as we're, winding down, of course, also. You know, what do you think people should be doing, or what do you think political parties should be doing to ensure that, you know, across board, of course, I'm talking of everybody now, all political parties, you know, should be doing to ensure that all of their supporters online, you know, should be visible on the day of election. Olubunmi has talked about some parties having, you know, cells and meetings and, you know, and all of that. But what more do you think can be done to ensure that all of this online momentum would be translated, you know, into results when the time comes?
Okay, Victor, that's a very brilliant question. What I think needs to be done is effective and proactive voter education, like Mr. Olubunmi has said, and I completely agree with him. And I'm not pessimistic about the elections. I'm completely going to get them to come out because I go out on the streets every day and I talk to young people. No matter what political party you're voting for, I try to encourage them. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that young people get involved in this election. And once they do that, once you create that pattern of voting, it becomes an easier process in 2027 and 2031 going forward, because Nigeria will continue even after 2023 election, irrespective of the result of the elections. That's my perspective. I think political parties need to build, the word that we use is structure, and that's it. There's no way around it. You need to build a structure, whether you want to build it the way it's been built in the past, or you want to build it a new way. You have to find a way to build structure that ensure that you are able to galvanize your base, young people, old, you know, men, women, and bring them out on election days. What this would require is, one, like I said, proactive voter education. It then means that you are going to have to adopt a door-to-door. If you have to adopt a door-to-door
approach,
campaign, more like an evangelism process, you do that. If it means you have to create avenue to meet with people, like he said in the cell idea, which I think is a brilliant idea, you do that. But these things must be continuous and sustained even after the elections are done, because we're not just trying to get young people to vote, we're trying to get them to be involved in the part to work the part of governance and government as the country looks to move on. Because at the end of the day, whoever becomes president of this country over in 2023, that generation is going to go, and our generation is, you know, practically just in line to take over from that. So we must learn the ropes of this, of how these things are done. And finally, before I submit, I was going to quickly correct the notion that he said. What I said about Osun and Ekiti was not geared towards any particular political party. I worked very closely with an organization that did a postmortem of the Osun elections, and what we found out was that 68.3% of people that voted were between the age bracket of 40 and 70. And that's a far cry from all of what I saw and expected to see online. Maybe perhaps because this is a gubernatorial election that does not reflect, and like I said, supports the motion that made me say that a lot of people are more interested in who becomes president and who becomes their governor. So I'm hoping, you know, and working towards ensuring that there's a lot more youth participation, not just in the election, but in the continuous electioneering process going forward.
All right, so just before I let you go, the figures we have now is that currently we have 32.9 million active social media users in Nigeria, and we also have 96.2 registered voters as it stands. You know, this is now ahead of the elections. So what are we going to be seeing? What are we going to be looking at? Are we going to see, you know, a higher percentage and a higher number of votes cast, in your estimation?
Yes, absolutely. There's no way. The voter registration has surpassed, we've broken the record in that. And I expect that this will translate into actual vote. Of the 32 million social media users, I expect that at least 60% of them will come out on election day. That in itself will be a victory for young people if we can get that number to come out and vote on election day. If 60% of the 32 million social media users can come out on election day and vote, that would in itself be a victory for young people in this country, and would have made a statement which ensures that the generation ahead of us listens to us very good.
Very well. Olubunmi, in your own estimation, do you think we're going to see a higher number of votes cast? Quickly.
Of course, absolutely. You don't expect Nigerians to pass through the torturous process of trying to register to get their PVC, and they will, after suffering that much, they won't come out to vote. Definitely they will come out to vote, because you know, and lastly, right, I believe that You don't build a house from the top. You lay foundations. Young persons will just have to know that the whole electioneering processes is a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to be interested pre-election, during election, and post-election. And I want to believe that the whole voter education thing has to go down to the grassroots, like Mr. Ahmed has said. And with the way the momentum is going, it's quite encouraging, and I believe that will translate into real votes going forward.
Well, I can't wait for that to happen, but I have to say thank you to you, Olubunmi Ayotunji, a legislative draftsman, as well as Ahmed Mustafa, digital media strategist, who joined us from Abuja as well as Oshogbo, respectively. Thank you to both of you for joining us today on the show, and that's where we'll wrap it up today. Of course, we'll be hoping that all of the momentum we see on social media would be, at the tail end, converted into real votes when the time comes. But that's where we'll wrap it up again, and of course, we'll leave you with the Mosby videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Victor Matthias.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Vic called by firing lawyer Michael Zekomen that Nnamdi Kanu should be allowed to go home the next day after a judgment in his favor kicks off this week's Mixed Viewed Videos.
Nnamdi Kanu was set free, discharged by the Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court has said such a discharge amounts to discharge and acquittal.
Up next, in fourth, is the presidential candidate of the APC, Bola Tinubu, expressing how confident of winning he is if he gets the support of the North.
I'm confidently telling you that I will win.
Third Sport sees the decitting and dismissal of a police constable after he used a machete to flog a civilian. In second is the rescue of a 67-year-old man who has been locked up in a room for 20 years in Kaduna. While in first is the discovery of an illegal pipeline.